Hello everybody, welcome to 7th grade pre-algebra. In this week's course we will be focusing on ratios. The objectives of this week's course are to 1. Teach you what a ratio is, show you how a ratio can be written as a fraction, and then work together to reduce this fraction to its simplest form. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers. Let's take an example. Matthew made 12 baskets out of 18 attempts. Here we're comparing the 12 baskets that Matthew made to the 18 attempts that he took. In a ratio, if the first number is less than the second number, the ratio can be written as a fraction. Let's look at our example again. Matthew made 12 baskets out of 18 attempts. The 12 baskets Matthew made is less than the 18 attempts that he took. So that can be written as a fraction, 12 over 18, as shown on the screen. Now that we have our ratio in fraction format, we can try and reduce it. To do this, we need to identify the greatest common factor for both our numbers. For those of you that need a refresher on greatest common factors and finding that number, I've placed a URL at the bottom of the screen for you to reference. In this particular case, our greatest common factor is a 6. So we take both our numbers and divide it by 6 to reduce it from 12 over 18 to 2 over 3. Now that we've reduced our fraction, we could restate our original statement. If you recall, the original statement stated that Matthew made 12 out of 18 of his shots. That can now be restated to say that Matthew makes 2 out of every 3 baskets that he attempts. Let's try another example. 27 out of 30 adult Americans own a cell phone. Can you identify what the ratio is here? If you said 27 out of 30, you're correct. Now, can that be written as a fraction? If you wrote 27 over 30, again, you are correct. And can this fraction be reduced to a simpler form? Remember, you'll need to figure out what the greatest common factor is. If you said that was 3, you're correct. Now that we've got our greatest common factor, we can reduce our fraction, 27 over 30, to 9 over 10. And we can rephrase the original statement to 9 out of 10 adult Americans owns a cell phone. Let's try a slightly harder one here. When David dropped the box of light bulbs, 24 out of the 60 light bulbs were damaged. Identify the ratio, if one exists. Tell me if it can be written as a fraction, and then tell me if that ratio can be simplified, and if so, how would you rephrase the original statement? If you said 24 out of 60 was the ratio, you're correct. That can be written as a fraction, 24 over 60. Then you can try and identify the greatest common factor, in this case 12, to try and reduce that fraction. Now that you have your ratio in a fraction format and you've figured out what your greatest common factor is, I hope you're able to see that the original ratio can be reduced to 2/5. Now that it's reduced, we can rephrase the original statement. The new statement now becomes, when David dropped the box of light bulbs, 2 out of every 5 light bulbs were damaged. So to recap the objectives of this week's lecture, a ratio is a comparison of two quantities, and it can be written as a fraction if the first number is less than the second number. Once in fraction format, if you can identify the greatest common factor between the two numbers, you can simplify your ratio. And once you do this, you can rephrase the original statement that does your comparison.